I had some scary moments. And those are the kinds of things that I've lived through that I bring to my writing as well. And I think that they lift off the page because they're pretty real. You know, I've been in those situations. So.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Conversation with your host, Nadine Matheson. As always, I hope that you're well and I hope that you've had a good week. And can I tell you right now, as I record this intro, the sun is shining. It's a warm day. Spring has arrived and it's absolutely amazing. This is what we want. It makes such a big difference when you know it's not going to be pitch black at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when the sun is still shining and, you know, the days are starting to get a little bit warmer and you're looking at the trees and they're no longer butt naked because they've got little blossoms starting to grow. But, you know, that normally means my hay fever's about to kick in. But, you know, I'll take it. I'll sacrifice the itchy eyes and nasal sprays just for extended daylight and warmer days. And what I love about this time of year is also that this podcast is still going, and it means that I have so many amazing conversations lined up until I think the season ends around the summer, season 3. But there are so many guests I've got lined up and I can't wait to talk to them and I can't wait for you to hear the conversations. And yeah, if you are listening, as is my request always, please follow me on social media and share the episodes and review the episodes. And if you're listening on Spotify, you can leave comments and I always see the comments and I reply to the comments. And also don't forget to support the podcast on Ko-fi, simply by buying me a cup of coffee. The links are in the show notes. And also you can buy the books of all of my guests on my bookstore on bookshop.org. Again, the links are in the show notes. Now let's get on with the show. This week, I'm in conversation with best-selling and prolific author Mary Hannah. Her new book, Her Sister's Killer, is out on Thursday. Careers in law. Mary worked in probation and, as you all know, I was a criminal defence lawyer. We do reminisce a bit about our times in the criminal courts. But in addition to that, in today's conversation, Mary Hannah and I talk about how her previous job as a probation officer prepared her for a life as a writer, how a decision not to be a victim led to her writing career, and what happens when a publisher asks for their money back. Now, as always, sit back, we'll go for a walk and enjoy the conversation. Mary Hannah, welcome to The Conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Right, I'm sorry I was a bit late to the party.
Yeah, Mary left me all on my own, like Billy No Mates in the corner, just waiting for her. But now she's here.
I am.
All right, Mary, my first question for you is, how would you describe your writing journey?
Long. That's the short answer. No, it took me a long, long time to find an agent, first of all, and then to find a publisher. I thought once I had Ollie agent, our lovely Ollie agent,
Yes.
who obviously represents you too, I thought that it would be a very short journey, but the book went out and came back and there were lovely, lovely things said about it. But actually, I think that it's a risk-averse business that we're in. And my first book had a gay protagonist as a main character rather than an add-on. I think if she'd been the sergeant and somebody else had been the DI, she would have been okay. But yeah, I was getting rejections time and again. And strangely enough, I was published in Germany first.
Were you really?
Before I found the home market, I was published in Germany. And so that was amazing, but very unusual because I felt, and I actually got in my car and drove all the way to Cologne to see my book on a shelf because I'd waited a long time.
Oh my God. It wasn't just a trip to, Waterstones or the supermarket.
No, it was Germany. Definitely not. So I had a new little Golf and I thought, that'll take me all the way there. So I went all the way there for the lady in the shop to say, Yes, but it won't be coming in until next week.
No.
So that was like first author fail.
Oh my, I don't even know
know.
what to say to that.
I know.
It's just,
I
it's
was
cruel.
desperate. I was really desperate to see it, on the shelf. And yeah, I wanted to burst into tears, but I actually burst out laughing because I thought this was funny. So I had a lovely weekend in Cologne and then came home. But actually, the second book had won a prize, and the first book, The Murder Wall, went onto the desk of Wayne Brooks at exactly the same time. So it was great because he had, extra ammo to fire away to his team. And and eventually he took a 3-book deal. I mean, it took so long to find a publisher in the UK that actually I'd written 3 books in that series before I was published.
I don't know whether it's serendipity this week, but I think I've had 2 conversations this week on the podcast, and I've been editing another one, and it's that same theme of finding the agent and, all the joy that comes with finding the agent, because you think that's the hard work done and everything should be, should just be nice and straightforward after that. But then spending years going through the submission process, book going out to various agents, and then you're working on the book, and then you think, okay, this is it. And just literally waiting years to get a deal.
Yeah, I mean, it was once I had Ollie. I mean, I went to Ollie. Little story before that was that I'd found an independent publisher that actually lived in the north, and he was going to publish my book. We went through the editing process and everything, and then the New Writing North agency up here chose the book for me to take out to libraries to sort of set me on my way. And then it was just a little while before publication. And I knew things should be happening and they weren't happening. I rang him up and said, what's going on? Because the book was finished. And he said, I'm sorry, but I can't publish you in the time of your contract. And I said, well, I'm not waiting. And then I had this sort of sorry tale to tell Ollie when I first met him about what my experience was. And then I said to him, and by the way, he wants his advance back. And he said, no, he's not getting his advance. He's not getting his advance back. Leave that with me, he said. So that was, that was before we found Wayne Brooks at Pan Macmillan took me on this 3-book deal, which was fantastic, I have to say.
This is just so much like open mouth moments in like the first 5 minutes, because it's, the whole advance thing. Like your fear as an author is that you won't be able to deliver on time, and for whatever reason, you just won't be able to deliver the book, and that puts you in breach of your contract, and then your publishers ask for the money back. You're not expecting your publisher to turn around and say, well, we haven't done our job properly, but can we have our money back? I would have said no.
I did say no. I didn't. I don't think I actually said no to him, because it came in an email. Well, if you're not publishing with us, then I want my money back. And I was going like, no. So I got in touch with Ollie. Ollie said straight away, let's just leave it with me. There's no worries. You don't have to pay this money back. I said, good, because I've already spent it.
This is the thing you do, don't you?
Exactly.
No matter how big it is or small it is, you're like, you've allocated it and it's gone. So if you want it,
I know.
I can give you air.
And it wasn't that much anyway. So, but I ended up, Ollie getting the deal with Pan Mac, which was great, because obviously they're one of the top publishers. And so I was with them for 8 books, and I'm with Orion now. But I've had some really down moments, some very big up moments as well.
How do you get through the down moments? Because a lot of this journey, I don't think you realise when you're first starting out, when it's just you alone, whether you choose to write your book, and your main goal is just to get an agent, and you're not anticipating the possible ups and downs that come through that. I said, going out on submission and trying to get your book published. How did you get through it? How did you manage it?
I'm pretty strong. If somebody says I can't do something, I always want to choose, prove that I can.
Yeah.
And there were many times when I could have just said, "Oh, do you know what? This is never going to happen for me." But Ollie believed in me. I think that was a lot actually to do with it. Ollie believed in me. I believed in my material, and we just kept going. So it was brilliant. Eventually when you're published, and then you start that sort of, oh my God, all I've done is sit in my office for years writing these books, and suddenly I'm an expert and I'm on a stage and I've got, people are asking me questions and stuff like that. And I was like, I'll tell your audience a funny story. When I was first published, I was launched at Hexham Book Festival. And they asked me, the lady who was interviewing me said, can you give us a few clips of what you'll be reading? So I said, reading? And she said, yeah, just a few clips out of the book that you might like to read so we can break up the conversation. And I said, I'm not going to read. And she said, what do you mean you're not going to read? You're going to be an author. Of course you're going to read. I don't think people do it as much now, but I was like, no, I'm not going to read. I was terrified. And she actually went away and got a Northeast actor to come and read my words on that stage. And while I was sitting there, I was thinking, she's good. I could do that. So that was the last time I had anyone read out loud for me. But it was an unusual thing. Let me put it that way.
But the thing is that, it sounds odd thing to say, but when you're writing, you're not thinking about going out and doing festivals at some point, and you're not thinking about going out and reading bits of your book to anyone. The only time I've used to read books way back when I was working in the bookshop and when I was at uni, and for some reason, manager decided that I should do the children's story time. So I used to read to the little kids. The parents would it was a different time. Parents would just dump the children on the carpet and they'd go off and do whatever.
Brilliant.
And I'd read.
We'd just leave them with Nadine.
Yeah, literally. It was like, we'll just leave them with Nadine. She'll read the stories and then they'll come back in half an hour, 40 minutes. And
I love reading to kids though, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Nice. I did used to enjoy it, their little faces. But yeah, even a couple of weeks ago, it must have been about a month ago, I did an event. And the furthest thing from my mind was reading my book. I didn't even have a copy of my book. Because I'm doing the event and it's for someone else's launch. So it's not really about me, but we're on a panel together. And then the chair said, so we're going to hear, you're all going to do a reading from your book. Like, no, I'm not.
I don't like it. I really don't like it when they spring it on you.
Yeah,
if they ask you beforehand. But are you published in Germany? You must be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am.
Well, have you been to the festivals over there?
No, I've never been.
Right. Well, I went to a festival in Germany and somebody did warn me. They want you to read. That's all they want. And they give you like 40 minutes to read. I was like, what? That is a long time. But I did it and I enjoyed it. And they asked questions afterwards. But they're such a massive reading, public, that they're quite happy to sit there and listen to the author read out their work for all that time. I mean, a 5-minute read is quite long. A 10-minute read, I always think, is too long because you're like putting people to sleep nearly. I mean, people don't want to sit still for that long, but not in Germany. It's completely different. They want you to read and read and read.
There's like two things to it. It's like, firstly, I didn't realise how big like the crime market or the appetite is for crime fiction is in Germany until I hadn't even signed yet. I think I was still doing the course, and I think Steph Broadbridge came in and did a talk and she was talking about the German market. I think I could get it wrong, but I'm sure that she got signed in Germany first. And we were like, Germany, it just seems so random, but the market is the appetite is so big for crime fiction out there.
Absolutely.
And the second thing I always say to the baby lawyers when I'm teaching, like, I've never done a closing, well, that's a lie, but more often than not, my closing speeches before a jury, I said on average maybe 20 to 30 minutes. The only time I've done one longer and it went on for an hour and a bit was because it was a seven defendants. It was a multi-handed case. Yeah. So, and the trial went on for about 6-7 weeks. So it was always going to be long. But on average, I like 20, 25 minutes. So to sit there and read for 40 minutes.
I know. It's a long time. I mean, I was sat. I wasn't stood up. But
I know, but sitting down.
Strangely, you should talk about a court and, stuff. It took place in a courtroom. And I was sitting where the judge would normally sit.
Oh, God.
It was great. It was Tübingen Festival. And it was absolutely wonderful and a lovely place as well. But I hadn't ever sat in a judge's chair before. Obviously, I'd been expert witness as in I stand there and defend what I'd said in a court report when I was a probation officer. But it was lovely to get the invitation, and and they were just lovely to me when I was over there. Really welcoming. I think I made lots of friends. You will see when you get there.
I mean, getting the invite to any festival. First, I think the first time I got one, I was like, this is different. Like, I just wasn't expecting it. But it is an important part of, I say, being a writer, being an author, going out to these events, and having that contact with your readers.
I think that close contact is the thing that I miss most during COVID, and when we all had to go onto Zoom and talk to people. And I know you can see people, but it's just not the same. It isn't the same. I remember interviewing Michael Connolly during that time at the bookshop. I was on my own in the bookshop, just interviewing him, just so that things kept going, and kept going. But I did miss the actual people coming up and chatting with you and asking questions, and they're so like they love plot, and they love to unpick a book, don't they? And oftentimes they'll mention something that I've forgotten that I've written. When you went to Whitley Bay? No, I don't remember that. With Bright, he was drunk and da 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 da. And then I go, oh yes, I remember now. It wasn't Whitley Bay, it was Tynemouth.
It's so funny when it happens though. So it happened to me. I was at Harrogate on the stage, and then someone stands up and asks their question. And it's about the first book, The Jigsaw Man. And they're asking about this character called Carol. I have no recollection of a Carol. I'm like, I didn't put a Carol in the book. And literally, I'm listening and I'm sitting in my head thinking, nope, there's no Carol in my book. I don't know what they're talking. I don't know how I'm going to answer this question. Clearly, they've got me mixed up with someone else. And then it's like a light bulb. I was like, oh, yeah.
Exactly. It just clicks, doesn't it?
Yeah. Like, she's very dead and I had to dig her up. And I was like, oh, yeah, Carol.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
what surprise! Once you got into the publishing industry, once you got signed with Pan Macmillan, what surprised you most about it?
Well, I thought I knew the industry quite well because I'd done my homework before I entered it, but I realised that I didn't know much at all. I didn't realise how many people were involved in putting your book together, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about your publisher, but mine lists everybody who's had anything to do with the book. The cover designer, everybody,
I like that, though.
It is lovely. It is great. And it should be there, actually. But yes, I remember going into Pan Macmillan's offices when I was first published, and they took me into the boardroom, and there was champagne glasses, and it was so lovely. And they one by one, all the staff who were going to work on my books were shown in, and they gave their names and their job titles and this, that, and the other. And I thought, by the time I got to the fourth one, I couldn't remember the first one. By the time I got to the 40th one, that was like, I was like so knocked out by, they all just had one person to remember. And I had all of them to remember. And I actually never saw a lot of them again. I think I don't know about you, but I don't because I live in Northumberland. I'm a long way from central London, where most of the publishers have their offices, and so I don't think I went back to PanMac other than to give a little chat to newbie writers some years later. So I never really met those people, but it is nice that they're listed in the back of the book, and rightly so.
Yeah, no, it is. But I think the thing I realised about publishing as well is that this is mainly for the people who are working within it. So whether it's the publicists or editors or those in marketing, basically everyone, people do move around a lot.
Oh,
and I'm not.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, and I'm not used to that. Like from previous working in law, I think people are very much, they're more stable.
Yes.
So, you know, if you found a solicitor who's been working from, I don't know, Smith and Co. last year, most likely they've been working there for like the last 15, 20 years. People don't see, even in barristers, they don't seem to move around chambers that regularly. So that, I think that was a surprise to me, how I could have someone like for one book, not my editor. I've been lucky. I've had the same editor for my book series. You know, with a publicist, I can have one publicist.
And it's a big deal, isn't it? I mean, it is a big deal when you're working with somebody and you get on really well with them, and you know, and then there's a big change, and often that change comes quite quickly. I feel as if, you know, you'll get an email and say, you know, your publicist is moving on next week. And you go, what? I was only talking to them yesterday.
But, that's exactly what it is. Like, those are the emails. You're like, oh, but I don't want you to go because we get on.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting for your audience, really, because you don't know, do you, when you start? You have no idea at all about, you know, those kinds of, you know, decisions that people make. And you know, there's so many. Everybody wants to be promoted, and everybody wants to, you know, have a varied career, and why not? But they do change. They seem to change a lot. It's like butterflies floating in and
they do. They flutter in or out of your life. There's a lot of heartbreak. You'll get the email and you're like, oh, I've been dumped.
Oh, no.
But it's not, you're not dumped. You know, they're moving on for their own personal career ambitions. But it's still it still hurts a bit. Do you think, I haven't asked this question in a while, do you think there's anything in your job, your previous job when you was working in probation, that has prepared you in any way for this publishing?
Oh, definitely. I mean, apart from the fact that, you know, my job, I you know, everything about the criminal justice system was my job. So I spoke a lot to lawyers, police, social workers, prison officers, you name it, all of that. But also in terms of writing court reports, and they're lengthy documents, and they have a beginning, middle, and an end, and also, you know, they have to make sense. Just like a book. That was very transferable, actually, to bring all of their life. You had to discuss their life, their background, all of that for a judge, and then come up with some credible kind of reason why they should not go to prison or why they should. Now, I work with I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I work with some probation officers who would never recommend prison at all. And I didn't agree with that at all. Yeah. And
I mean, I had PSRs, so pre-sentence reports, and sometimes the recommendation, I mean, they were ridiculous. I'm not saying all, but sometimes you'd read them and go, this is ridiculous. Like, even I know that you're saying no prison. I'm like, he's going to prison. Because the guidelines say so, and
that's where he should be.
But not to make a recommend. I can't imagine a judge saying, they'd be like, well, where's recommendation? This report's not finished.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy, and it's as crazy as I worked in the prison for 3 years. You know, people making when you go and talk about parole, everybody's there. There's a panel of you, and often we don't agree with each other. Yeah. But if you say in a scenario like that I just think this person shouldn't be paroled, they're not taking their sentence seriously, they're not prepared to discuss their offending in any meaningful way, they don't even admit that they did what they're in for, and I would not recommend somebody's early release on that basis. But it's just one of those kind of things that you don't realize until you go into the job. I mean, you being a lawyer, you'd have seen every kind of offender go. Were you a criminal lawyer?
Yeah, criminal.
Yeah. So, but apart from all of those things, I think it's I bring my experience to my work in ways that are not like, I don't mean I would ever use a real case to put a story around, but certainly I had experiences that were quite frightening at times, because we don't go around like coppers do, double crewed. We're on our own. Sometimes you're going to their houses, they're drunk, they're high on drugs. I had some scary moments. And those are the kinds of things that I've lived through that I bring to my writing as well. And I think that they lift off the page because they're pretty real. I've been in those situations. So yeah, at that, plus, as I say, the putting together reports and writing about people, that was the first really official kind of writing that I'd ever done in my life.
This is a silly question. They do train you? I mean, teach you how to put these reports together?
Yes, they do. Now they don't even have to go to university. I went and did a CQSW, which is a certificate of qualification social work, because that was what you had to do when I joined. I was Home Office sponsored, so it was brilliant. I was paid while I was training. So, I had a grounding in law and sociology and psychology. And that was really, you needed it. To do the job, you needed it. And then all of a sudden, they decided, the Home Secretary decided that that wasn't a thing anymore. There was no that people like me could train on the job. You can't. It's not right. I don't think people realize that now. But yeah, it used to be a 2 or 3 year course at university before you could become a probation officer. And now people just apply for a job and would shadow an officer. It's not the same thing. It's really not.
And we're not, from my point of view, from defence, and the amount I didn't train. I mean, I had, as a trainee solicitor, so you're training for 2 years. Mm-hmm. You're not going to court, but you are training for 2 years if you're doing criminal, and I was doing criminal law. So, I'm in and out of police. You might say I lived in a police station for about a year, as far as I'm concerned. But you're in and out of police stations. You're dealing with all sorts of people. You're seeing every single, every single fragment of society. Like, you have a window into it, and then, I mean, you learn on your feet as a criminal solicitor, like with the first day of qualification. That's the first day you go into court. But in terms of, preparing cases and taking instructions from clients, and then learning how to tell a story, because that's basically what you're always doing as a lawyer, especially a criminal lawyer and a trial lawyer. You're always telling your client's story. But the thought of going into that with no training whatsoever, and a job like that, even if
it's also risky to the public. Yeah, and I think it was a bad choice. I think that now the qualification is gone; it won't be back. I mean, I'm talking years ago. I joined the probation service in 1983. So then we were trained. Now you're not.
I know.
And you're talking. I mean, probation officers have to deal with big crime. And the prison I worked in was a young offenders institution called Castington, and we only actually worked with people who were in there, were doing 6 years to life. So we're not talking about, thieving a piece of cheese from Tesco's or anything. These are serious assaults, rape, and murder, obviously. I mean, and then, but then you've got when you're in a field team, you're actually supervising people who are out on life license, and that in itself is quite something.
Yeah, I think the one important thing, but one of the most important things that being a criminal solicitor taught me, especially literally in my early days, in my baby days going to court, was just not to make assumptions about people and not assume that someone charged with a specific offence, so whether it was drink driving or assault, that they're going to look or behave a certain way. And
absolutely, they don't have horns, do they? There's no
exactly.
There's no like
or like
thing
the
across.
Or the Hamburglar in McDonald's, like they're not wearing the black and grey stripy shirt.
Exactly, not.
Yeah,
but I mean, that there are some nice good stories. I was doing an event at Newcastle Library once, and this lady came up to me at the front and she said, "Can I just have a word?" And I said, "Yes, of course." And she said, "You used to be my son's probation officer." And I thought, "Oh God, what's she going to say? Maybe I wasn't very popular with some." And she said, "Well, I was reading your book and I happened to call him. He lives in America. And I said that I'm reading this book. I'll send it to you because it's really great and you really enjoy it." And so he'd said, "Well, who's the author? I'll get a copy." No, she said, "I'll send it. Her name's Mari Hannah." And he said, "Mum, that was my probation officer." She said, "I just wanted to tell you now that he's living in New York and he's a millionaire." I was going, well, strike one for Mari, because you don't ever know when people, there's always that revolving door where people are going in and out of prison and you think you've worked really hard with them and they go out with all good intentions. And then somebody gives them some drugs or whatever, and they're back to the, thieving or whatever. But you never, you don't really get the feedback. But that one piece of feedback made me think that, I must have done some good with some clients.
You did. And so the moments are far and few between. But when they happen, like, I mean, I got horrible moments. Like, I can't believe. Like it happened to me. Like in my first year qualification, it wasn't even my first year. It was literally in like the first 6 months. And I remember my boss at the time was like, "I've never heard of this happening to anyone." I had 4 clients dial me in like the first 6 months of qualification. Yeah, all for various. One got run over by a prison van. Another one, 2 of them drug overdoses, and one had an epileptic fit in the bath. And anyone else, I reckon they probably would have. You have to be in a certain mindset, I always say, to do this job. They would have just given it up. And I can still see my boss looking at me like, when I told him like the 4th one had died, he's like, "I've never seen that happen to anyone, and you're only like 6 months post qualification." But then I got the really nice moments of I say one of my kids, he was such a good kid, and it was one of these things, hanging around with the wrong friends, and he's at a friend's house and a fight breaks out, someone gets stabbed, everyone gets arrested, and he's only 17, never been in trouble before. They remand him into custody pending trial. I do the trial, and I always used to talk to him like, "I don't want, like, I know you don't need to be here. This is not you. Like, sort your life out. Like, stay if you get out, stay away from these friends, change things." And then he gets off. So, no conviction. He disappears. And then about 4 years later, I get an email from him. And he's like, "I don't know if you remember me, but I didn't forget what you said. And just wanted to let you know, I just graduated from uni, got my business degree." Really? And I was like,
"Isn't it good?
I'm gonna cry."
Good,
yeah. So you do get moments.
Yeah, definitely.
Listeners, it's time for a very short break. If you're enjoying this conversation with Nadine Matheson and want to help keep the podcast going, why not buy me a cup of coffee? Your support goes such a long way in keeping these conversations flowing. Just check out the link in the show notes. So, Mari, when you finally got your publishing deal, right? If someone had told you back then, after going through all the ups and downs of getting your deal and all those rejections, if someone had told you that you would be writing your 16th book would be coming out, what would you have said to them?
I only ever wanted to write one book. It was like a love. Honestly, it was like a love letter to my partner, who was a murder detective before she retired. And but like I said, I got the bug, and I did all sorts of things while I was waiting to be published. I went off and did some screenwriting. I did all sorts of stuff, and I would have died, and I would have just thought. I used to go into bookshops, and we've all done this, haven't we, as baby writers? Gone into a bookshop, and you've seen your one spine standing there, and then you look at Michael Connolly's, and it's a whole shelf full, or at Val McDermott, and it's a whole shelf full. But I mean, now I go in and I look at mine, and I think, God, did I write all that? And I just got the bug, and not only that, I mean, the awards that came, I've won 5 major awards, and I think the biggest turning point for me was when they asked me would I chair the Seeks and Soul Peculiar Crime Writing Festival, and I was like 7 years after I was published, and only 20 people or 19 people, I think, at the time had done it before me. I was like, wow. That was a big moment for me, a really big moment. Yeah. But I mean, I haven't quite finished yet, because I'm in active development with Kate Daniels for TV, and I'm under option for the Stone and Oliver series with Buccaneer Media, which is brilliant as well. If I see my characters on screen, and I like it,
you like it.
I'm not actually writing the Kate Daniels stuff, but I will be writing some of the Stone and Oliver stuff myself, because I've explained that I had been a screenwriter at one point. At one point I had a foot in 2 camps. So it was either books or it was TV, and I didn't know which was going to kick off. And it just so happened that the books is what kicked off first. But if I get to see, if I live long enough, Nadine, to see my characters on screen, I will be chuffed, and that'll do me. I'll be I could die happy then.
You know what? The backlist thing it's so funny, because I wasn't thinking about it like when the 3rd book came out last year. Like I just wasn't thinking about it until the paperbacks came out, and I think I got tagged in on something on Instagram, and it was my books on the shelf, like in the bookshop, and I went, oh, I've got a backlist. When before it's so nice, because you have that moment when it's just your one book, and if you're lucky, you might be on a table in Waterstone, so you see a stack of them, or you just seen that one, your one book, The Spine, amongst all the others. So that is an amazing, it is an amazing moment.
It is, and I mean, I only became a writer because I was assaulted at work. I don't know if you know that, but
no.
It's a long time ago, and then they let me go on a medical pension. I literally was not going to be a victim. I just thought, no, there's more to life than sit, at home and feel sorry for yourself. So I started to write as physical therapy for a wrist injury, a serious wrist injury, right wrist as well, which was bad. So I became a writer by accident rather than design. Actually, I don't know about you. I mean, how did you start?
No, I always wanted. Well, I'm going to ask you about this, but I always wanted to write. Like I think I've always had that bug and loved books. But then I said I knew I wanted to be a solicitor. So, and that's a clear path in your head.
Exactly.
You go, the steps to do that. You go to uni, you get the training contract, you qualify, and you become a lawyer. But
you're still a lawyer.
I don't practice now.
No, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I commend people who do practice and write full time, because it's a lot. But
writing's a full time job, isn't it?
Writing is a full time. Yeah, it just is. But I think instinctively, I always wanted to write, and I always imagined myself writing a book, and then life just worked out the way it did, and I found myself able to. But everything that's happened in the last, let's say, last 6, 7, 8 years, I didn't anticipate it or even think about it. It was just this is just something I'm doing, and let's just see.
Exactly.
But it's what I want to know. But when did you know you could tell a story? Because it's one thing to say I'm doing this as therapy, but instinctively you must have just been a feeling there that you can tell a story.
Well, I like I said, I didn't even think about being a writer, but I used to write little poetry odes for people's birthdays and put them in their birthday card and things like that. So there was obviously a little writer in me, inside of me, that wanted to come out, but I never thought for 1 minute, and I really honestly did not know for 1 minute. But when I got feedback, even though people were saying, I'm sorry, but this is a pass. I mean, Ollie used to say to me, a pass is still a pass. I know it hurts, but we'll just move on to the next one. But I think the feedback that I was getting was so good. I thought, I've got something here, and I've worked so hard to get, to do it. And I didn't start. I can't tell you what age I was when I started, because that would kind of give my age away. But and I never do that. Somebody asked me that the other day. Would you mind telling me what age you are? And I went, yes.
No.
And just a ballpark figure? Nope.
Nope.
So anyway, so I think the feedback from those, I just knew, and I knew that when I won there's a Northern Writers Award I won for Settled Blood, which was the second book in the Kate Daniels series. When I won that, I knew, and I just kept going.
But didn't you know when Ollie signed you? And we keep talking about Ollie, and Ollie's our agent, Ollie Munson. He's brilliant. But didn't you realise? I mean, because that's always the big step, that big hurdle to get an agent. So that should be validation, shouldn't it?
It was validation, and I mean, he was amazing, because I after this unfortunate incident with the first publisher, the indie publisher that I had, I went to London with some writers from the Northeast. They do New Writer North, the agency for new writers here. They do this little soiree with their publishers and agents in London to introduce people that they're working with. And they said they would take me. And so that's where I met him. And I told him my tale of woe and thought he would just go, and go away. But he didn't. He said, oh, send it to me. Send me the first 3 chapters and I'll have a look. So I sent him the first 3 chapters, and he said, right, okay, I've read them. I love it. Just send me the rest. And he said to me, he rang me. He must be a very fast reader, because he rang me.
He
was the next day, reader. I think. And he said, I was up till 3 o'clock this morning reading this in my bathroom so as not to wake my wife. And he said, and I'd had a bit of an experience with another agent before that who said she wanted to represent me. And then after a couple of years of saying, I want your material exclusively, and we'll work on it together, she bowed out. And when Ollie said he liked my work, he said to me, the only thing is it needs a bit of work. And I said, yeah, I appreciate that. I can do the work. But what you're asking for is everything the previous agent told me to take out. And he said, you haven't thrown away the drafts, have you? And I went, no, I'm not that stupid. But that was what it was. So he said, and I said, I don't want to do that without representation. He said, no, the letter's in the post. So that would be great. So
he is a good agent. Did you? I remember, right? Because you write more than one series, and I remember when I met Ollie, it would have been the first time I met Ollie, and he asked me if it was a series, and I've never lied about this, obviously, except at the time when I said yes, it was a series, but I was not planning for it to be a series. I'd just written the one book, so I just said it's a series, and then I pitched him something for the second book. Did you know you were going to be writing a series, or are you just taking it one book at a time?
Well, I just took it one book at a time, and at the time I think series was the thing. Writing goes in different ways, doesn't it? And certain things are in and then they're out and something else takes its place, but series were definitely in. But it happened with me with a book that I decided to write while I was writing the Kate Daniels series. I came up with this idea, actually something my partner said to me and made me like run upstairs and start writing this standalone that I didn't know whether I could ever sell or what have you. And I got it finished, and it was a standalone, definitely. And it wasn't until it went to the US, they wanted a second one in the series. So I ended up writing 2. I haven't ever written a third because I haven't had time, because since then I've changed publisher. They wanted me to write something new. So I've got 3 series on the go, but I haven't written a Ryan and O'Neill for a while.
You know, it made me laugh, right? When I see Ryan and O'Neill and Stone
I know you're
Oliver.
going to say.
I know, yeah. I was like, it has to be a conscious decision. It wasn't just a fluke.
It wasn't. Honestly, I can honestly tell you that somebody in an audience once said to me, "What is it? What is it with you with the Stone and Oliver and this, that, and the other?" And I said, "You know what? Until you said that, it never even crossed my mind."
Are you serious?
Honestly, I'm serious. Honestly, I would tell you if it was true. But yeah, very bizarre, isn't it?
It's so bizarre because I've got it written down in my notes, and I'm like Stone and Oliver, and I've written since I'm like, well, that's Oliver Stone, director. Ryan O'Neill. Well, it's not Ryan O'Neill, it's Ryan and O'Neill, and I'm like, well, Ryan O'Neill, the actor. I'm like, it must have been a conscious decision. I mean, sometimes, because I know when I spend so much time thinking about character names, because you don't want to have the same character, 4 characters with a name both beginning with R. So I'm always constantly thinking about it and going through the baby name books. And sometimes
I do the same.
Or sometimes I'll be like, okay, literally I've gone through football teams. Like whose name can I use? So, it's so much thought goes into it. I'm like, there's no way that was just a fluke. Like you're saying it was.
It was. It really was. And I'll tell you why. I can explain why David Stone is a very he's a really nice guy. He's quite quietly spoken. He doesn't really lose his rag. He's a good cop, and but I wanted him to have a name that was completely against what his character gives you. So it's not hard at all. There's nothing hard about Stone. But so I gave him the name Stone, having already created Frankie Oliver, who's a 3rd-generation cop. My partner knows people who, there's 3 generations of cops in their family and what have you. And I just thought it would make her a bit different from Kate Daniels, who doesn't get on with her family, and Frankie Oliver does completely. She's a very family person.
Well, whilst we're talking about Frankie Oliver and David Stone, I need to stop laughing. Stone and Oliver. It's not anyway. I pull myself together. Would you like to tell the audience about Her Sister's Killer, which is book number 16, which I think is amazing?
Yeah. Well, the inspiration behind the book was to pay off what I set up at the beginning with Frankie. I gave both Stone and Oliver, quite sad backstories, and my books can all be read as a standalone. I always give a little sort of hint of what's gone on before, so that I don't bore readers that are with me already. But readers of the series know that when Frankie Oliver was 11, her sister was murdered, and that case has remained open and unsolved for a long time. So I knew from the outset that because she was related to the victim, she could not investigate her own sister's murder. So very consciously in the previous book, Black Fell, I kind of separated her a little from David, and she's promoted from DS to Inspector. And of course, you can't be promoted from DS to DI. So I had to take her out, put her in uniform before she could come back as a DI in the murder investigation team. So I kind of, at the end of Black Fell, I left it on a bit of a cliffhanger. She's getting quite close to Stone. She knows she's going away. She's going off to Berwick to do a uniform post. And they were getting on famously. And while they're at the party, David Stone hears something that disturbs him enough to leave, and he does, and he just disappears. And this is how her sister's killer opens, and it disturbs him enough to reopen the case. He's not sure what he's overheard was just people mouthing off at a party, having had too much to drink or what have you. He knows he's got to chase it up, so he does that. So this book is that the two of them are separated slightly. Frankie has a case that she's come across, which is a child trafficking case that she gets embroiled in. And in the meantime, David has reopened her sister's case and has to do it under the radar for obvious reasons. And he only works with one person doing that. But Frankie being Frankie, she's wondering why on earth is she getting the cold shoulder, and why is he not like talking to her anymore? And starts to dig, and she's asking around, and what have I? My nose is out of joint. What's happened? Why is he treating me like this, and all of that. So there's a big mess between the two of them because their relationship has grown closer and closer, and now I've like split them apart a little bit. But yeah, so that I always knew that I would have to write that story. And to be honest with you, Nadine, I wasn't quite sure when I was going to write it until kind of halfway through the previous book, when I took them off to Iceland in pursuit of a group of kids who had possibly committed a murder in Kielder, at Kielder, where we live, near where we live. And then he gets called back. So they have been separated then and got together at the party. And then this book kicks off from the very moment the last one ended. And I thought it was good to do that because Stone has a difficult backstory of his own, which I dealt with early in, I think it was book 2 or 3. But I think the other thing I wanted to do was, because obviously I've had close contact with offenders, but also with victims. And I kind of know that how, I've got firsthand experience of how devastating it is when someone dies suddenly and it's not an accident. It's bad enough when it's an accident, but when it's like on purpose, the ripple effect that goes out across all family. I mean, you will have come across this in your work. It's horrendous. And I want, and we've all always seen Frankie Oliver's family as coping with this dreadful trauma that has befallen them. But in this book, you see it more, you feel it more. And for the first time, you see Frank actually turning up at his sister's murder, not knowing that it's her.
You know the way you talk about it, and you can hear all the emotion behind it. And when I was reading the prologue, and it's funny because the prologue is just the prologue. It's not the whole story, and you could argue it's just a small moment in time. It's not like, but it is a small, and it's such a pivotal moment. But it's also so powerful because I was saying to someone yesterday when I was recording this podcast, and I say it's those moments that make you. I was in bed reading this book, but it's those moments that make you sit up in bed and gasp and I could feel it in my chest. The moment, but the moment when Frank, and it's not a spoiler because it's literally in the opening pages, but the moment when Frank literally asks to see the body and he realizes who it is, and then he lets out this guttural scream. Yeah. Like I just felt like I feel like I could hear it.
Yeah. I know. I know what you mean. And actually, Orion were really lovely and let me put the audio clip out of the prologue, and people have come back and gone, wow. Yeah. Actually, my son's reading the book now, and he, as soon as he got it, he got home and he must have read the prologue straight away, and he came back and he said, Mom, that is really amazing, that opening. So,
it is.
Thank you.
And the thing is, like, you always hear, like, I'll see it all the time in whatever writing group or online talking to people, and you'll hear the argument, oh, I don't see the point of prologues. Why have you got a I mean, I always throw a prologue in. Actually, to be fair, I think the last book, The Kill List, because it's a flashback scene, which I kind of count as a prologue, because it's flashback to like 25 years ago. But I think prologues have a point. There is like a need for them, but they can't just be there just to, fill up some space.
No, I think that was my editor's choice as well, because she hadn't read all of the books, because I had my previous editor left and went to another publisher, and when she took over, the Blackfell had already been written, and then we were doing Her Sister's Killer, which wasn't called Her Sister's Killer then, but that the title was changed, and she said, "Have you ever?" People know about the fact that he turned up on an ordinary shift. He was called out to this death. And I said, they know about it. And she said, have you ever taken them there? Like actually taken them there? Have you actually seen the scene?
Yeah.
Have we seen it? And I said, no. And she said, well, that's where you start the book. And it was Sam Eads, actually, her idea, which I thought was quite inspired.
I think it's a brilliant idea, because I'm telling you, anyone who reads that, when you're in the bookshop and you're browsing, and that will be the book that will make you'll read the prologue and you'll be like, no, I need to take this off the shelf. I don't care how much it costs.
Well,
I need to take it off the shelf.
I hope that's going to happen next week.
It will. I'm putting it out there. Her sister. What was it called before? Her Sister's Killer.
It was called A Truth More Painful Than Murder, which I thought was very intriguing.
It's very intriguing, but it's long.
It is long. It is long, and Her Sister's Killer. I mean, it does what it says on the tin, doesn't it?
It does.
But who am I? I didn't argue. I thought, that line is. I think that line is in the book, and that's why I lifted it as my title, my original title. But that's the other thing you don't know. Going back to sort of being a baby writer and coming into the industry, you just don't know that your title's going to get changed.
Nope. I said, because when you come up with a title and you think you've been original, because I remember when I came up with the title for The Jigsaw Man, because it was an assignment, and I always say I just can't leave my workers just assignment 1 or book 6. That I need to call them something. Yeah, so I called The Jigsaw Man a Jigsaw Man. Then it turned into a book, and it just stayed as The Jigsaw Man.
Yeah,
and then I can't remember if it went out on submission, and then I realised there's a non-fiction book called The Jigsaw Man, and then there's a Michael Caine film called The Jigsaw Man. So I remember saying to my editor, well, we can change it, because there's all these other stuff. She's like, no, we're gonna keep it, and it stayed. And The Binding Room was called something else. That was the second book. I think it was called False Prophet, and I didn't like it anymore, because I think a book had come out called False Prophet. The Kill List was, I don't remember having a title for that. I think it was more collaborative. I called it something to work on it, but I think it was a collaborative thing of coming out of a title. And definitely the same with book 4, because book 4 really I called it something, but I was like, I know this is not the final title. I just need to give it something.
Well, sometimes that happens, and sometimes when you get even an English translation, not an English translation, but like go to the US with an English language book, they want to change it as well. I know Monument to Murder, which is, I think, the 4th book in the Kate Danner series, was called that, and when it went to the US, they said, we don't really have any monuments over here, so we're going to call it Fatal Games. And then somebody... They
got Mount Rushmore.
I know.
They got so many monuments.
That's what they told me. And they said that they were going to call it Fatal Games. So this lady went out and bought Fatal Games and then gave me a 1-star review because she'd read the book already. Which I thought was funny.
What?
Do you know what I mean? I was like, so now where I've got books in order on my website, I've got brackets, Fatal Games, US title of the same book.
Oh my God. The 1 star is annoying though. It's like, I don't mind you give me a 1 star if you got a valid reason because you genuinely thought it was crap. But just because it came late from Amazon, wherever it came from, whatever innocuous reason that they can come up with, I'm like, seriously. Right.
Yeah. But there are odd things, aren't there? Absolutely odd things.
There are completely. Right. Before I ask you your last set of questions, this is one I like to ask now about author's latest book. Was there a challenge in meeting? Let me do that again. Was there any challenges in writing Her Sister's Killer?
Yeah, because, I made myself cry quite a few times. And I think if I'm crying, then my audience are definitely crying.
Well,
but I think that you get so emotionally. I'm an emotional person. I always have been. Ask Ollie, he'll tell you that he's seen me cry quite a few times, from happiness as much as anything else. But he's, it's one of those things. This is a very, very emotional book, a really family-oriented book that I felt. I had to put my life and soul into it, sort of thing. And I think if you get deep into the emotions of character, it's bound to affect you.
It's so weird when you get that first emotional response to a character that you created, because there comes a point. It could be when you're writing the first book, it could be when you're writing book 4, but there does come a point when you see them as fully formed human beings. They ain't just these. They're not just fleeting moments on a page. And I get the emotion with Henley and Pelletier, who is her boss, and obviously she's married to her husband, and these two should be together. And I remember writing one scene. Was it in book 4? Yeah, I was writing a scene in book 4, and between the two of them. And I literally stopped. I felt like I was watching like one of these Hallmark movies, and I was just like, "Why are you not with him?" I literally was like, "What are you two doing?" And then I was like, "I would be with him." And I was like, "Nadine, he's not real." But that's literally that's how I felt.
Exactly. They are real to you. I mean, they are real people to you. I remember. I can't remember who it was. Now, I was watching on stage once, and a female writer, and I think it might have been Patricia Cornwell. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But what had happened was she'd got in a lift, and a reader got in afterwards. I can't really tell. Was it her? Was it a terrible memory? Anyway, the author gets in the lift, and this woman gets in afterwards and said, "Why did you kill such and such?" And I will never read your books again. Why did you kill that character? Da, 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 da. And I just thought, well, sometimes this happens. Some people are invested. That's exactly what you're after. That's what you dream of, having people who are invested in your series characters. It different. I think it is different with series. I think it is different from a standalone, because they have got to know them so well. You can almost second guess what they're going to do or what they're going to say, which I like, actually. And then if something hurts them or somebody threatens them, they're like, wow, But yeah, that's exactly what you're aiming for, isn't it?
I know. It was still a surprise, but I feel that what you always want when you're writing series characters is that you need to be learning something new about them with every book. It could be something small, like I learned that Henley's allergic to lilies. I didn't know that in the first book, but it could be. I was like, oh, she's allergic to lilies. Yeah. And then I learned that I'd given Remuta, all of a sudden he had like a drug problem when he was at university. I didn't know that when I first created him, but I think you need to be continuously discovering something new.
Definitely.
Right.
And about sorry, I was just going to say about your series characters.
Yeah.
Are you? I mean, people ask me this all the time. How many books will you write of that series? When do you see it ending? Will you just keep on writing while people are enjoying it? Do you know what I mean? It's a good question.
It is a good question, and I think I said in the beginning, I didn't know it was going to be a series. It was just this one book until Ollie was like, is it a series? Yes, it's a series. But now I'm just like, as long as I can keep giving them good investigations to work on and I can still see them growing as individuals, then I'll just keep telling their stories for as long as possible. And I'm not bored with them. If I found myself, if I found myself getting bored or feeling like I was just being repetitive, then I would pull back. But I haven't reached that stage.
Definitely. I agree.
All right. So, Mary, are you an introvert or extrovert or a hybrid of the two?
I think I'm a bit of both. I think most people who know me would probably call me an extrovert, but I'm really, really suited to working on my own. And when they let me out, I love to have a good time, do you know? So I'm quite happy in my own company, but I do like. I think probably I'm more of an extrovert now than I was before I started writing. That's because I do spend such a lot of time in my office by myself.
Okay. So what challenge or experience, and I say it can be good or bad, what challenge or experience in your life shaped you the most?
Well, I think the assaults on me at work was, I went to work one day and I didn't come home the same person. And now I'm doing what I'm absolutely happy doing. I'm privileged to be a writer. I know you feel the same. But that day changed my life. That split second actually changed my life. And, I think I said to you before, I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to let that define me, because that's what I'm like. I'm quite strong like that. And so that's probably the answer I would give to that. Definitely.
Okay. If you could go back to when you were 25 years old and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Live your dreams and don't wait. If you want to do something, get out there and do it. What's ahead of you, do you?
No, you don't. That's the thing, you don't. And I think sometimes you can get when you're that age, you can get so distracted looking at what's going on around you with your friends and family sometimes that you can kind of lose focus on what you should be doing.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. So what is your non-writing tip for writers?
Non-writing tip?
Yeah, it could be anything. Drink water, take your vitamins.
Walk, I think. Walk, have the fresh air. I mean, that's what I do whenever I get the chance. I'm very, very lucky that Northumberland is a beautiful county. I love London, but I love to get home. But we've got the most amazing countryside and the most amazing beaches. And when I want to just chill, that's where I go. I sometimes end up talking to myself as I'm walking along because things occur to me. But these days, it's not so bad, is it? Everybody's talking to themselves in these.
Well, you can just assume they're on their
phone. Exactly.
Yeah. I remember.
When I first started, I tell you what, you couldn't talk to yourself without people looking at you oddly.
I can remember clear as day the first time I saw someone talking on a Bluetooth headset, and I was walking down Oxford Street because I was working in Soho. So this is 2006, and I was walking with must be someone I worked with. Yes, we're walking back towards the office, and it was an actor. I can't remember his name now, but he was in This Life, and he played Miles. And he was walking in front of me, and I was like, he's talking. I'm like, oh, it's him. And then I was like, he's talking to himself. Just talking to himself. And we're like, what's wrong with him? And then I saw he had the Bluetooth headset.
Yeah.
And that was the first time, 2006. And now you're just like, they're just chatting.
Everybody's doing it.
Everyone's doing it. You just wouldn't. You know what annoys me?
Everybody's doing it, but don't you think that's a bit of a shame that everybody's doing it? Because actually, nobody's smiling at each other when they walk along the road. You see, where I live on the edge of a tiny little village. When I walk down into the village, everybody's saying good morning and stopping and chatting. No, they are not looking at their phone, talking to their phone, carrying coffee. When did that become a thing? When everybody couldn't go anywhere without having a cup of coffee in their hand.
Mary and I just sitting there moaning. You know, it winds me up. Two things wind me up about the whole phone thing. It's when I'm driving and it's not even like it's a red light. It's whether it's a crossing or something. And then the person's just I'm saying blindly, just walking across the road, looking down at their phone, might have a coffee in the other hand. And I'm like, I'm in the car coming towards you. Like, you're not doing the green cross code. You're not looking left or right.
No.
And then the second thing that winds me up is if I'm watching reality shows, and especially American ones, and I'm like, why are you holding your phone while driving? Everyone's phone connects to the car, unless you've got a really, really old car. But you're there with the phone and speaker on your hand, so that winds me up.
Yeah, it does.
So finally, Mary, where can listeners of the conversation find you online?
They can find me at marihanna.com, which is my website. They can find me on X, Blue Sky, and Instagram. That's it, really.
You're everywhere, basically.
I am.
Well, Mary, that just leaves me to say, Marihanna, thank you so much for being part of the conversation.
Oh, do you know, it's been a pleasure, because even though we've known each other quite a while, we haven't really had a conversation, because we're always at events and people are rushing here and there and everywhere. But thank you very much for inviting me, Nadine. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's conversation with Nadine Matheson. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for a brand new episode featuring more amazing guests. Don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a review. It really helps the podcast grow. And if you'd like to support the show, you can buy me a cup of coffee or sign up on Patreon. The links are in the show notes. And if you'd love to join the conversation as a guest, feel free to send an email to theconversation@nadinematheson.com. Thanks again for your support, and I'll catch you next time.